Neurodivergent people are known to process emotions differently from neurotypical people. And since love is a very big emotion, it's only natural that they would show or look for love in a different way. And it's perfectly natural. But this is what we're going to talk about today is how love shows up for most neurodivergent people and how we can adjust the way that we interact with them so that we can show that we care for them or that we can actually receive their way of showing their love to us. So for those that don't know me, my name is Danielle C Baker. I am the founder and CVO of Being Connected. I'm also a registered early childhood educator with over 20 years experience in the field. I do work with parents, teachers, and educators to navigate the realities of what parenting is today. But don't get it twisted when you work with me. We're going to put the child's needs first. So put the pride and ego aside and let's get to it. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, for season 2, this episode is brought to you by the Self-Esteem Doctor Online Academy with the amazing Dr. Simone Alicia. There's a wealth of resources there to help with your child's self-esteem and confidence and so much more. So I'm going to leave the link in the description box so you can have a look at that. I highly recommend it. We're going to jump right in today. We're going to talk about the love languages of neurodivergent people. I've done an episode on how to explain the love to children so we can set them up for healthy relationships as they grow older. And I've also done another episode on the regular, if I could say, the neurotypical love languages. But I wanted to do this episode because it is important to understand that for neurodivergent people, and there's quite a large spectrum there in terms of who falls under that category. So for some people, they may relate to the typical love languages, but for many of them, because they don't process emotions the same way, because they don't interact socially in the same way, the way that they love and the way that we can show them that we love them or how they would interpret love shows up differently. And it's perfectly natural. There's no wrong way of loving somebody. But if we can understand their languages when it comes to love, then it just makes it a lot easier to interact. So we are going to go through that today. I'm going to walk you through what their love language let's look for. We're going to go through 5 main ones, and so that you can kind of pay attention if you are if you have neurodivergent children, or if you are surrounded by neurodivergent people, or if your partner is neurodivergent, you'll be able to understand and kind of pick up on their signs that they're showing you that they love you, or that you can kind of approach it in that way using those languages once you figure out which ones they kind of gravitate to, and just show them your love through their language, and they will appreciate that. So what is a love language to neurodivergent people? Now, it is generalized, like I said, so many different variations of neurodiversity. So not everybody is the same, but we can talk about when we're talking with people that are on this autism spectrum, people with anxiety disorder and ADHD, ADD, all of that, where there's different ways of processing. The brain just processes things differently. Emotions is one of them. And love is a very big emotion, so they will process it differently. Now, we actually have a different word. It's not necessarily called love languages. They're called Love Locutions. And I know I'm not pronouncing this right. In French, it's locution, Love Locutions, which is a bit different from the languages. But a love locution is just an emotional bid for relationships. So if we break it down, a locution, again, sure if I'm pronouncing this right. It's locution is a word or expression characteristic of a region, a group, or a cultural level. So it's really just an expression within a certain group. And an emotional bid is when you do something to signal that you want attention or a connection. So it is a little different. They're not going to flat out say that they love you necessarily. Some of them will, but some of them will say it just to follow everybody else. Don't forget that many neurodivergent people do wear masks when they're in social settings because they don't want to feel different, or they want people to believe that they're that different. So they will play the part, not understanding what love actually means or what it means when they say that they love somebody. They will not necessarily understand the typical love languages. I'll give you an example for somebody that may be on the autism spectrum, very sensitive to certain senses. Obviously, public display of affection or any kind of love through touch, that's one of the love languages. It will not work for them. It will actually aggravate them. Doesn't mean that they don't love you, but they're not going to be able to receive that message. So that's why an emotional bid is a little bit different. It's just something to signal that they want a connection with you without flat out saying it. Most of the time, neurodivergent people will express their emotions non-verbally. Now it is quite, I'm generalizing again, but for neurotypical people, when we're talking about languages, we associate it to spoken languages, verbal languages. But for neurodivergent people, there are so many other languages through nonverbal actions. So that's why when we say languages, that it might not necessarily, we might not be picking up on their nonverbal languages that are showing us their affection, because we're waiting for the words. So that's basically what it is. So an emotional bid, like I was saying, is like when we do something to signal somebody that we are looking for a connection. This essentially that works for any kind of relationship, not just romantic, but for friendships, for family, even professional relationships. So if you're at work and you know that you're working with neurodivergent people, you need to take that into consideration, that if they're approaching you a certain way, now that you know what a love locution is, don't think that they're actually, flirting with you. They just want to connect. They just appreciate you. They feel safe around you. That is the biggest thing for them. For love doesn't show up the same way of the rom-com love that we were raised to believe that what love is. For them, it's just that they feel safe around you. They trust you. And so they want to show their appreciation the way that they do. Doesn't mean that they're in love with you. So you have to take that into consideration as well. So it's just essentially for any kind of relationship, like I just mentioned, romantic, social, professional, and it's a request to connect. They are non-verbally telling you that they're looking for that connection, and they are very afraid to be vulnerable. So this is a way for them to express it. And if we're not paying attention to these cues, we're actually shutting them out. We're shutting them down. So that's why it's important to be talking about this and discover this new language. And so we're going to go through 5 different ones. I'll explain to you how that shows up and how you can use those languages to show your appreciation. Again, doesn't have to be romantic. It could be with your child, with family members, with your neighbor, with anybody that you would know. Or you could pick up on, even if you don't know that they are neurodivergent, you could kind of pick up on it as you get used to these different types of interactions. So the first one is info dumping. We're going to go flat out with the one that most people know about. The info dumping is also called a spin. So this is you have to understand that some people will just be like, oh, that's TMI, it's too much information. They just go off on a subject that they're very interested on. People on the autism spectrum will have these spurts of little mini obsessions sometimes, and so they'll just go right into it, and they'll be so animated about it. They'll just be talking and talking and talking, and you'll be rolling your eyes and going, okay, that's enough. But you have to understand that they're not doing this to annoy you. They're doing this because they feel safe around you. Don't forget that a lot of them are wearing masks all day long to kind of fit in, to blend in, so that they don't make everybody else uncomfortable around them. So it's exhausting to have to hold on. And so if they're starting to info dump on you, it's because they actually appreciate you. They feel safe around you. This is a compliment. Don't take it as annoying. They actually are opening up. They're dropping their mask, which is something they hardly ever do to share something with you. That's a very vulnerable spot for them. So welcome that in. And so they will talk about interests, their passions in details and at length. This could go on for hours. And some of them may not even realize that they're doing it because they're so excited at the fact that they can share it with somebody. And some of them will. A lot of ADHD, ADD type of neurodiversity will say it. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just kind of dumped all of that on you. But it was just, um, they couldn't help it. They just did it. But at the end, they're like, I understand. I shouldn't have done that. And so don't shut them down. Just say, no, I really appreciate you sharing that information with me. It's a new side of you that I get to know, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Just open up that conversation, welcome them in, and so that they can open up even more, drop those masks, and it'll relax them. You'll see physically, you see that they start relaxing a lot more. Info dumping is a very vital part of the autistic culture. It doesn't mean that all autistic people do it, but it is something that is very common in the autism world. So it's considered a sign of caring. So let them ask, let them share, ask them about it, openly ask questions, get involved in the conversation. Don't cut them off and don't add to it. Just ask them more question about it. Say, wow, that's really interesting. What else have you learned about this? Or what else can you tell me? I've never saw it that way. You can kind of open it up and you'll see them light up. So for children, that is something that is very important because we are at that point trying to get them to interact more. So we can't be shutting them down to say, okay, that's enough. You've been talking about this like for 100 years. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it'll feel like that sometimes. You will be tired as a parent. Or as a friend, even you'll get tired. You'll be like, I don't want to hear about trains anymore, but let them talk, even if you have to tune them out a little bit. But don't forget, neurodivergent are very, very, very sensitive to nonverbal language, to your body language. So if you're tuning them out, they will know. So look interested and get it, ask them questions, ask them about it, and just get involved in the conversation. It's a great honor. If there's somebody that info dumps on you, take it as a great honor that they feel safe. You are a great person to them. So doesn't mean that you need to info dump on somebody unless you share the same interest. But when they start talking excessively and in great detail about what they like, let them talk. Don't interrupt. It's not a lot of them don't have that two-way conversation concept. So let them talk, and when they kind of take a break and just ask about it, a little bit more, and they'll be very happy with that. There's a second one that you see a lot in children, but you will also see it in your teenagers or adults, and that's parallel play, or we call it as also the body doubling. So parallel play in this case is not like what we would see in a regular developmental stages of children, where toddlers it's part of their social development, where they will start to parallel play. They will be playing with other children, but not with them, just side by side playing, maybe with the same toys, but not actually interacting. This is not quite it's similar, but for neurodivergent people, it's just a little different in that term. So if you see your toddler parallel play, don't think that it's because they are neurodivergent. Not necessarily. It's part of the social development. So the great thing about parallel play is that there's not really any interaction involved. So it's quite the opposite of the info dumping. So you're being alone together. That's basically how you describe it. There's no expectations. You're just being alone, but together. So there's the proximity, but you're not interacting. So you exist together. That's it. No expectations. So you're all doing your own thing, but you're in the same room. Or you're doing the whole thing, but you're sitting on the couch, sitting side by side. So if for your children, it could be that they're playing video games or watching something on their tablet, and you're sitting next to them reading or doing some kind of work next to it. You could be doing some, getting dinner ready, for example, and they're they're in the room with you doing their own little thing. For a neurodivergent person, especially in the autistic world, again, that is huge because they feel safe around you, but they don't necessarily want that interaction, especially if they're overstimulated with the sensories. They will want to have that calm time, but that proximity with you gives them a sense of security, again, feeling safe, secure, and they appreciate it. It's another way of showing how you care. So it's just doing something. It's you're like I said, it's completely different. As an adult, you could be in the same room. One's playing video games, the other one could be, I don't know, knitting, crocheting, whatever. You're not talking. One could be listening to music with earbuds on. You could be side by side, but you're just coexisting together. And it's just really nice, no matter what happens. You know, you don't have anything planned. You just go with the flow. You do your own thing, and that could be very reassuring for your children to know that there's somebody around them that they could just be quiet and calm and not be bothered, right? They could just take that time to breathe, but they still have some kind of connection with somebody. It's also a great way to find out, especially for children on the autism spectrum, it's very difficult to make friends at school. And at school, we were always pressuring the students to make friends with their classmates. So this is something that you can use in terms of parallel play. Use that to your advantage to find out how well your child is being integrated into the group. So instead of asking, have you made any friends? Who's your friend? They're not going to answer because they don't really understand what a friend relationship is in the neurotypical sense. But if you tell them, you know, who are you sitting next to today? Or who are you playing next to today? And just pay attention if there's the same name popping up all the time. If it's little Jimmy, it's always there. And it's a positive interaction, right? Because there could be little Jimmy, could be a bully. But if it's a positive interaction where you're just always reading my book next to, you know, little Jimmy, but Jimmy keeps popping up, then there's a really good chance that for your child, little Jimmy is his friend or her friend. So that can help you in terms of opening up, and then you can kind of check with the teacher and see how the interaction is to make sure that it is a positive interaction. And that way you know that little Jimmy's your child's friend in your child's definition of what a friend is. So parallel play can be very helpful for you to see how your child is doing in terms of social interaction at their level. So keep that in mind. The other one is support swapping. What we call the sharing spoon. Now, this is mostly, we see this more with adults or even teenagers. It's a really interesting concept. I really like that, but it's to help in the neurodivergent sense of things. Sometimes it's very difficult to keep up with the routine or to remember, especially if you're dealing with ADHD, ADD. So it's just like when neurodivergent people support each other. So it's really within the community where one neurodivergent person will and another neurodivergent will kind of help each other. And this is what it could look like. So you could remind each other, did you drink your water today? Right? It could be something like, did you take your meds today? You know, did you forget to take your medication today? Did you take it this morning? So you kind of help each other out. One that I really like, especially within the with ADHD, is you can just randomly call your friend and say, I'm coming over in 30 minutes. Your plan is not to come over, but just to tell your ADHD friend that you're coming over, they will clean. So I've actually had that with a friend of mine where she was like, I can't keep my house. I can't, it's just not, it's not registering. So she had asked me to do that. Just like once a week, can you please just give me a call, say you're on your way, and call me back in 2 hours to say, no, forget it. Did you get everything clean? Because with that time, with that rush, that last minute time crunch, she was able to get the cleaning done. So that's what we mean by support swapping or the sharing spoon. So you kind of This is where a certain way that neurodivergent people can kind of fill in the gaps in their lives or in their memories or in their routine, so that they're actually staying healthy, and they're supporting each other in whatever challenges they may be going through. It's kind of like parallel play, but it's in a supportive way, right? They're doing their own thing, but they will check up on each other once in a while and say, okay, right, did you eat something today? Things like that. If there's an important appointment, you could call them to remind them. So you could kind of pick and choose what works for you guys. So that is what support swapping is. There's another one that's called a Love Locution is called deep pressure. Now this is a little bit different. Very, very effective with autistic people or anybody that would have sensory issues or deep anxiety and that kind of thing. This is what we would call like put me back together, that deep pressure, where we're talking like literally the deep pressure. I'm just being careful not to hit my mic, but you'll see that a lot. It's that kind of squeezing. Sometimes it could be a hug. Not every neurodivergent like that proximity. It might be a little too much. Swaddling is one of them, or they like to kind of like be in a hammock or something like a weighted vest, just to push that pressure is very helpful, because they're so outside of their bodies sometimes. That's why I always say it's kind of put me back together. It's just that pressure is kind of a grounding effect on a neurodivergent person. So it's on the proprioceptive way. It's like a proprioceptive input. It really is just like getting back into my body and refocusing as to where I am in the present. It soothes the body. It's like a stress response, right? It just helps to calm down. There are some machines out there that help as well. Like I said, the weighted blankets, the weighted vests, they help because again, there's that pressure. And sometimes as a child as well, you can, like I said, just kind of that squeezing the body, like the hugging yourself type of thing. You could do that with your child as well if they are comfortable with you touching them. Swaddling is not just for babies. So it's just like developing yourself in blankets just to feel cocooned. And it's a very soothing thing. So again, you could kind of incorporate that with your parallel play, where you just wrap your child in a big blanket and you watch a movie together. And that's just, so it's the greatest interaction you can have with a neurodivergent person. The last one is it's my favorite because that's what I do. It's the penguin pebbling. And so they got that name from, of course, penguins. When they like another penguin, they will bring little pebbles of different shapes, different colors, and they will bring it to their feet. So they kind of share these collections of pebbles. And that's basically what a neurodivergent person will do. If they know that you like a specific thing, they will give you little gifts like that, those little pebbles, right? Not actual pebbles, sometimes it is, but for example, for me, if I know that you love horses and I see a little something with a horse, I'll get you a card with a horse. There's the kind of thing where when I was younger, it was excessive. Like I would just, every occasion I could get, your room would be packed with little horses, but that's basically what it is. And it's just a great way to show their love, that their appreciation of you. But it's just basically their way of telling you, I care about you, or this made me think about you. And this is like one of the greatest ways to show your love as a neurodivergent person as well. It's just, I thought about you, so I'm giving you this. Sometimes it will be a leaf. Sometimes it could be a bug or a flower or something that they made. But it is just a very sweet gesture for them to say, I really care about you. You will see that in young adults as well. And they are very shy, especially if they kind of have a harder time socializing. But they will, some that are very good at drawing will have drawn a portrait or some kind of drawing. and they'll give it to you. And so take it, even if it may not mean much to you, but for them it means the whole world. So even if you have your children that come back with dandelions, right, and other little clovers that they picked up, or a really nice soft shiny rock that they found on the side of the road, little things like that is often what we call the penguin pebbling. And that is another form. So if somebody or your child is info dumping on you, that that's something that they like, it's something that you could show them as well and say, here, saw this little train and it made me think of you. And that's it. They're just gonna absolutely love this. One of the kindest gesture you could ever do for them. So that's basically what that looks like for the 5 main love languages for neurodivergent people. Like I said, it will vary. Some of them will have their own variations of them, but start paying attention, because they're not going to flat out say, I love you. Or if they do, it might not necessarily mean what you think it means. It means something different for them. So look through those gestures or these kind of behaviors around you, and that's how you will know. And if you want to show your appreciation to somebody that is neurodivergent, then start showing them or how you care about them through those behaviors as well, and they will really appreciate it. So I will leave you with that. I hope it helped. I hope it can open up discussions about how love shows up differently for people, and there is, again, no wrong way of loving somebody, but we need to pay attention. It's not just saying I love you that shows how much you care about somebody. It shows up in so many different ways, and you don't have to be neurodivergent to show your love that way. Some people will penguin pebble, they just didn't have a word for it. We call it gifts in the regular typical love language, but just kind of have a look at you may have some of those patterns. Doesn't mean that you are neurodivergent, but they may show up in your life. So I will leave that with you. And if you have any questions, or if you'd like more information on it, please do not hesitate to contact me. And again, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're watching or listening from, and have a look at the Self-Esteem Doctor Online Academy as well. Get some great information to help your child. So I will leave that with you. And until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.